Okay.
What is a consumer brand builder?
What is a consumer brand builder? So no one was really focusing on founder-led, mission-driven CPG. Like if we were to do a case study on 10 brands that have gone viral, 9 out of 10 did not have 10 C-level executives around a boardroom planning. People fall in love with the brand not because of who they say they are, but who they show they are.
You had this company, Covet, which was an incredible company and brand that you sold twice. See, you never thought of yourself as an entrepreneur?
No, and I do now.
Sure, but right? I mean at the time.
I say that even a little happy. I'm like, am I an entrepreneur or was I just a great publicist? Am I an entrepreneur or am I just a great conversationalist? Yes, now I do, but I did not. I always kind of I always pushed myself, like I never thought I would start my own thing. And again, going back to, I think, an ingredient for success, I think there was something in that of not knowing how hard you could fall because you've never even thought of it, that you just run.
Yep.
And then I think it's super powerful.
Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here in this capacity.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you finally in this seat with me. I mean, as an advisor to Everbull and just an amazing consumer brand builder.
Got it.
Yes, it's such a cool name.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's been fun getting to know you over the last year and seeing what you're doing at Everbull. And this is a fun, different way to kind of connect.
Yes. So first question I have to ask, because I love your title.
Okay.
What is a consumer brand builder?
What is a consumer brand builder? So a consumer brand builder to me, and I should probably preface it by, I really like CPG, so consumer packaged goods. Consumer is a big title. So within consumer, my focus is CPG. And the way I have described it to my mom, who still does not know what I do 40 years later, is kind of the conduit between when a founder has an idea or has an early stage brand, really bringing it to the masses. So how do we do that? How do we talk about the brand? How do we communicate the brand? How do people fall in love with the brand? How do people purchase the brand? How do we get people coming back to purchase the brand more? And there's about 1,000,010 decision points from the beginning till that. And that's really where I come in and where my new company, Goldilocks, comes in with my founder, Heather.
So go back just a little bit there. So because there was a lot there for me.
Yeah.
So it's not the ideation of what the product is. I have a product. I come to you because I need help figuring out, okay, this is my product. Now, how do we identify my target market, who my audience is, how they perceive us? Is it smarter for me to talk to you when I am thinking about like branding elements, et cetera, or after that's polished and now it's like, okay, this is my go-to-market product.
Sure.
Now.
Great question. So Goldilocks, to take a step back, it's a founder-first strategy firm through the lens of two former CPG operators. And we think that's really a good differentiator because when you run a business and you've operated a business, you have had so much blood, sweat, and tears. And you have had to figure things out on the fly. You've had to make mistakes in real time. So the kind of thesis of what we're doing is kind of allow all of our learnings and experiences to help founders. Now, to answer your question, we help brands from pre-revenue, but they have an idea. We're not coming up with the idea. So they figured out, hey, we've come up with this concept. We think we have a product that's going to X, and we're going to do that by Y, all the way to brands that are doing 20, 30 million in market and revenue, but really need to figure out, like, do they have the right brand positioning? Are they communicating their product right? Are they selling it in the right places? How are people discovering it? Why are people coming to their product? What are people trading in? And so we help within that kind of sweet spot of pre-revenue to about 20, 30 million.
I mean, I can't imagine, because of all the questions you just said, I can't imagine how companies kind of go without having all that defined and are doing such high revenue. But being one myself, because I'm struggling. I mean, full disclosure, we're working with you in a real capacity because I want that insight. But I didn't even realize what I didn't realize until you opened my eyes to it.
Well, and I think that inherently is the problem. You don't know what you don't know. And when you peel that back and look even like on a larger macro level, when you become an entrepreneur, like I didn't go to business school. I did not read a business book. I love my family, but we do not have a business bone in our family. So much of what I kind of stumbled upon and why I'm doing what I'm doing now is you don't know what you don't know. So how do you fix something you don't know needs fixing, right?
Yep.
And that's why one of my methodologies in growing in my career was surrounding myself by people who've been there and done that, because they can really succinctly point out the issues and help you preserve capital and resources, which as a founder are really your two main things you have. It's time and money, in an efficient way, and help you basically. We always say you bring someone onto your team. It probably takes a full year before you realize you've made a mistake. Because you hire them, you train them, you let them try their own things. You don't want to micromanage. And then you're like, oh man, this is not a right fit. You've lost so much time. And so the kind of idea behind this is like, let us come in and take this combined 60 years of experience. Well, maybe 50 years. Let's not age ourselves too much. And how can we really help prevent you from making those mistakes and point out the problems? And I think something that's unique is if you're a brand, you oftentimes have an advisor around you. Advisors are great, but oftentimes they point out the problems and they're like, peace, go find the solutions. And so something that's a little different about us is we stay on to do the execution.
So how did we come up with the name Goldilocks?
So I love my kids, my husband, and number 3, coming up with names for things. I'll go and I'll just kind of brainstorm. I remember when I was coming up with the name with Covet, my husband and I went to the marina and we were looking at names of boats. I was looking at ingredients at the store. You kind of get all this inspiration. And with Goldilocks, if you go back to kind of the thesis of what I just said, is you need the right help at the right time, and you want to preserve time and capital. So it's this idea of it's just right, which if you read the parable, this idea of not too much, not too little, just right. And so our hope is that when you bring on Goldilocks, you're getting the right help at the right time, and really just what you need.
So you're very humble, because you say 25 to 50 years experience combined, which I'm going to give each of you and your partner 25 of that. But really, I think while you're not a PR firm, your background, I mean, you brushed over the fact that you had this company, Covet, which was an incredible company and brand that you sold twice.
Thank you. Yeah.
Which is important to understand, because when you sell something once, okay, I mean, it takes a lot. I've sold companies, not everyone gets there. But to build something that is sellable and then to be sold again because it grew even more shows what you created the first time. And I think that that's so important to your next phase, because you got the experience at Covet of seeing so many brands in the CPG sector go through this whole period. And I'm assuming your job was not always to do the strategy. You had to now go and promote companies that maybe didn't even have that figured out yet.
Yeah, more times than not, which is also why Goldilocks exists.
So when you were doing Covet, did you do some of this strategy, or did you kind of have to say, oh my gosh, how am I going to promote this brand that doesn't even know what they really do?
Yeah, great question. And I guess just to wind back a little bit about Covet. So I started Covet in 2014. I've been a publicist since the early 2000s when I lived in New York and I was doing PR there. And really why I started Covet was this intersection of all these trends that were happening. But this was 2014. So you're not going to Whole Foods and seeing like a million like kombuchas and gut welling products. Like this was a time where there were still these big legacy brands that were taking market share. But you started to see these tiny brands pop up that were having consumers leave the General Mills and the Kellogg's and discovering these brands. And so I saw a real white space, which I think all entrepreneurs do, is they look at something and they're like, hey, maybe I can do it better. And no one was really focusing on founder-led, mission-driven CPG. So to me, that was kind of my aha moment. What if this is what we do and we're the world's best at it? And so when I started Covet, again, I had no idea what I was doing. Still question if I know what I'm doing some days. And I really just wanted to help founders, and I just wanted to really be super picky about what brands I worked on. And so to answer your question, brands would come to me and they were brilliant founders. They were, wanting to change the world, but like half the time they did not know what they were doing. Most clients I had, they're first-time founders. And a first-time founder versus a third-time founder is just different. And sometimes it's not a good different, because you have a lot less naivete. And I happen to think naivete is like the key to success for so much, because I always say if I knew what I was getting into, especially I had 2 kids during the time of running my company, I probably would not have done it. So half the time they did not know what they were doing. And so 100% it was helping them figure out, what is your white space? What can you uniquely deliver that none of your competitors can? The con was I didn't necessarily have the time and the bandwidth to do that for every client. And as we grew to different offices and really scaled in team, I continually saw that this was a problem that needed solving. And you can go to these huge advertising agencies, but I think what's different with what we do is it's through the lens of an operator, and it's through the lens of what's going to resonate the most with consumers, while keeping in mind how much money do you actually have to do this, which that last part is sometimes people, and I get it, don't do because it's more fun to be creative with limitless budget. But when you factor all of those things, I think that's when you get a really good brand strategy.
It may be more fun with limitless budget, but some of the best creativity is actually when you don't have a budget.
Yeah.
Because you have to be more scrappy, which almost creates more virality.
1,000%. Clients to me all the time are like, how can I go viral? And I'm like, if we were to do a case study on 10 brands that have gone viral, 9 out of 10 did not have, 10 C-level executives around a boardroom planning. It was usually like user-generated content that just really hit well. It is not typically this orchestrated thing behind the scenes that's happening, especially now. And something that is more challenging doing work now is consumers are so savvy and they can see through a very well-marketed, well-orchestrated plan, and they don't want it. Like people are just over it. So that authenticity is super, super key. It always has been, but I would say now more than ever. And like to your point, lots of times it comes from not having a lot of budget.
But what I'm hearing, and I'm so glad you're saying this because it's helping me re-cement my own belief that clarity and true clarity on vision of who I am, where I'm going, and where I want to be, a target, is so critical to my success regardless of budget. That founders, entrepreneurs, even business leaders inside of departments that work for big companies, sometimes we don't have that clarity. We're going towards, I want to go viral. I want to sell my product to a lot of customers. That's not very specific.
Right. And oftentimes, I think you pointed out, it's very tactical. And like people fall in love with the brand, not because of who they say they are, but who they show they are. And a lot of what I find marketers do is they're saying, this is who we are, but show me. Like, it's like being in a relationship. It's like, you don't want a guy to tell you how much he loves you. Go buy her flowers and take her out on a date. Like, put some action behind the words. And it's the same thing with brand marketing. And so oftentimes brands are so focused on being at the right places and doing the right things. They've totally lost, like, how am I showing up to consumers? Why is someone going to like follow me on social? Why is someone going to purchase my brand? And it's not because of those like beautifully well orchestrated, well curated marketing moments.
So I want to go back in time to come back forward because you originally wanted to be a talk show host.
I did.
That was your dream coming up.
I think it still is my dream, and I'm not giving up on it. Maybe there's a talk show host for, millennial mom somewhere that I can start, but that was my dream. My mom told me when I was 2 or 3 years old, I would get up from the dinner table at a restaurant and I would go take the little flowers out of the vase at the table and bring them to people in the restaurant and say, how was your day? How are you doing? And yes, I think I'm compassionate, but I'm just so curious. I have this voracious curiosity. I cannot go somewhere, and I got it from my mom, without asking a million questions. And it's, I think, what's opened up a lot of doors for me. It's probably, like I said earlier, I think it's been the bane to some people's existence. They have a hard time getting in a word sometimes with me, but I'm just so curious about not as much people in general, but motivation. What makes someone do something? Why does someone go zig when everyone else is zagging? Like, what is the impetus behind that?
So with the goal of being a talk show host, I know you worked at MTV.
Yeah.
And what did you do for MTV?
MTV, I did casting. Now, this was the heyday of MTV. This was Hit My Ride, Next, like the best shows ever. This is when they played music videos. This is when TRL was happening. So I worked at MTV and I did casting at MTV. And I specifically did casting for Room Raiders.
Okay.
And a few other reality TV dating shows. And again, this was before the Kardashians. Like, I always predate this because I think for people who like pop culture, that's like a good defining moment. This was pre-Kardashians, post the Anna Nicole Smith show.
Okay. So when you were doing casting, obviously you have to figure out who your contestants would be, what they stand for, where they're going, and help them gain the clarity for the show.
Yep.
Because you had to typecast certain personalities.
Yes. Now, I'll say, when you're casting Room Raiders, you are just looking for someone that can be a little outrageous. I mean, like all good TV, you don't want vanilla people. Mm-hmm. And we casted people. I mean, looking back, I don't know how this was legal. I'm sure it was legal because they had a very highly paid legal team. But we would go down to Tijuana in a bus, and we would go down to the bars that all the American college students did, and like mid tequila shot down someone's throat, we'd be like, so what are you looking for in a significant other? Now, I don't know what data we were looking to get, but we did find great people to cast. So yeah, it was like asking the question that leads to the question that leads to the question.
Is that the same kind of tactic you used when you first broke into PR? Is that kind of how that transition from, I mean, talk show host makes sense. You ask a ton of questions. You're going to be the one bringing out the best or worst of your guests, but really it helped to figure out what we're here to discuss. Then you started doing casting. Yep. Thank you. At MTV.
Yep.
And then that in a way is PR. You're the frontline PR for MTV.
It's a great way of saying it. I think, I think of PR as you are like the conduit between the brand or the person and the end product. So with PR, you're the conduit between the brand and the consumer. With casting, you're the conduit between the talent and the viewer. So you're there to kind of create the tension, the stickiness. So like, why should someone care?
Yeah.
So why do they want to buy the product? Why do they want to tune into the show? It's really creating that stickiness, creating that like that je ne sais quoi that just captivates people.
But how far how far forward do you have to be thinking to know if you have to have a good visibility to what the show's going to be before the show even exists, because the first person you cast has to fill a role, and then you have to kind of surround them.
Yeah, so what would happen in particular with room raiders is you cast a ton of people, and then you ultimately decided with the other casting producers and casting assistants who was going to be the star, so who was going to be the person raiding the rooms, which I luckily was one of those person raiding those rooms. That's a whole other story, but at the end of my job there, they're like, would you ever want to do it? I was like, sure. So I now know both sides actually, but point being is that you could either be the person raiding the room, so you'd either be given the black light, and you know what I mean if you've seen the show, or you're one of the 3 people whose rooms got raided. So they would typically pick the person that had an ability to carry the show versus someone whose room was getting raided.
So you were a room raider.
I was a room raider.
So you carried the show.
I carried the show. And
well, let's hear that story.
Oh my gosh. it has recently resurfaced on YouTube, and
I'm going to go watch it when we're done.
I was 22, 23, right out of college. And yeah, it was, they played a trick on me, my good old buddies at MTV, and they made it the Beauty and the Geeks episode. So I got to raid 3 young gentlemen's room when they all had some eccentric skill sets. But yeah, it's very funny being on both ends of it. I certainly should have done that before I cast, because it's a whole other set of skill sets you're looking for when you're the one in the hot seat.
Do you have any crazy story from that experience?
Oh my gosh. I'll tell you that like all reality TV, you don't actually go on the date with the person who wins. So I was on another reality dating show called Dismissed, which was back in the day, also an MTV show. And it was the show where you and a friend go on the same date with one guy, and at the end, he picks one of you. I was dismissed because, shocker, I was too outgoing. That one, again, you're supposed to pretend like, oh, this is a romantic connection. As soon as we were done filming, my friend and I came back to San Diego. So the reality is that these shows are not realistic.
It's reality TV, right? It's drama. I mean, you have to create it if it doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, what are we going to watch?
Absolutely.
We're going to watch 2 people watching TV on the couch.
Absolutely. I also was on Wheel of Fortune, and this was all.
How'd you do?
I think I won like 5 or 6 or 7 grand. I have a horror story to tell you about in a second. But the through line between all of this was like, when I wanted to be a talk show host, I was like, oh, I just need to go on TV, and I had no idea that's probably not the way to do it. But it taught me so much during it. And I was just a bulldog. I was like, I will get on TV. Some way I will get on TV. And then I think in 9 months, I think it was on like 3 national either dating shows or game shows. And it just, I think when we think about core values and we think about what makes someone successful, I think one of them absolutely is perseverance and tenacity and literally having like tunnel vision. Like you will knock down whatever wall you have to do to be where you want to be.
Well, because the goal means more, like the achievement of the goal matters more than what you have to do to get there.
Absolutely.
Because too often we spend all this time focusing on, oh, this is what I have to do, and I'm stuck in that mindset instead of realizing, like in sales, I used to tell my sales team when I had a sales team at my payroll company, If I told you to go get 50 people to say no to you, the 51st will buy, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to run and talk to 51 people as fast as you can.
Totally.
It's a numbers game.
Yeah.
But if I don't tell you that, then you go 47 straight people said, no, I quit.
Yeah.
And you never get to 51.
Such a good way of saying that, 1,000%. And I think sales is in PR. I mean, ultimately, if you were really to zoom out, I'm selling. I would never describe it that way because it feels kind of like icky to be like I'm selling, but you have to be so captivating and you have to be so confident and you have to be so creative. It is just like being a really great salesperson.
But everybody's in sales.
Yeah.
Even your accountant is in sales.
Yeah.
They have to sell their coworkers or their boss on why their way is good or why they're the one for the promotion. But sales is not icky when you step back to your point and you're just say, what does sales mean? It means I have clarity of what service or product I'm offering. I have clarity on who that customer is, and I'm going to explain and articulate the value of my product or service to somebody in a way that solves some of their problems and is a solution for them.
Yep.
And I call it solution-based selling, which is how I've always sold. It's only icky when you try to force somebody to buy something that isn't for them.
Bad stigma. It has a really bad stigma because you think of like used car salesman or someone selling you something you don't want, but ultimately it's the vehicle that, if done correctly, gets people what they need.
See, you never thought of yourself as an entrepreneur?
No. And I do now.
Sure. But right? I mean, at the time.
I say that even a little happy. You know, I'm like, am I an entrepreneur or was I just a great publicist? Am I an entrepreneur or am I just a great conversationalist? Yes, now I do, but I did not. I always kind of I always pushed myself. Like I never thought I would start my own thing. And again, going back to, I think, an ingredient for success, I think there was something in that of not knowing how hard you could fall because you've never even thought of it, that you just run.
Yep.
And then I think it's super powerful.
Well, you can't know how far you can go unless you're willing to kind of go too far.
Yeah.
Right? And it's
a really good way of saying it.
That's the crux that holds us all back as we go, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But, Siri, you get off the game show.
Get off the game show.
We win some money.
Won some money, although let me tell you, this was 2003. This was when Harry Potter was coming out. The category is fictional place. I'm spinning the wheel. I have a Ford Focus. I have a trip to Jamaica. I have, I think, $15,000, and I'm spinning and I'm looking at this puzzle and I'm like, what are these letters? And I was like an idiot savant with Wheel of Fortune. And I keep guessing a letter and it keeps popping up. So I just keep going. And then I get this sliver where you pick it up and it's either $10,000 or bankrupt. And I pick it up and it's $10,000 and I keep going. And ultimately I land on bankrupt. And I have almost every letter on the board. I'm like, what is this? And it was Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Now, if you have not watched Harry Potter, that is a made-up word. So I won, but I left a lot of money on the table. But yes.
But you won.
But I won. And I told Pat Sajak my dream was to be a talk show host, thinking that would, do something.
Of course.
Did not do something.
Yet. You put it out there.
I did put it out there.
It's going to happen.
I'm hoping so.
It's going to happen. Or you'll do it for fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of iterations of that.
Today you're a talk show host.
There you go. So I was MTV, I was E! News, I worked at E! And it was such a fun job. My first real job, 9 to 5, was I worked in the development division at E! News. So I was the first line of defense when people were pitching their own TV shows. So I sat at a desk and no joke, my job was to watch the Today Show followed by The View, then pick a talk show host, so Jenny Jones or Ricky Lake. And then I would watch on VHSs people's submissions to have their own show. And then I would take them to my boss and say, these are the people that we should bring in for an interview. And that was my job.
You got paid to watch TV.
I got paid to watch TV. And I got paid even more than that to really, in retrospect, look at what makes someone interested in something. Is it the diction? Is it how are they selling it? Is it what they're selling? Because again, going back to sales, they're selling an idea. They wouldn't say it like that. So it really helped to cement too, what makes people, what creates demand. And it didn't really matter what the kind of medium was. In that case, it was a television show. But again, it kind of all piled on to leading into PR.
So, Mom, I was limited to 30 minutes of TV a day when I was a little kid because you said I could never make money watching TV. Yeah. Apparently, I could have made money watching TV.
You can, especially just terrible, trashy TV.
Did you find any of the biggest shows from
So at
your
that,
VHS experience?
This was pre Kardashian, but there was a bunch of shows that made it like 1 or 2 seasons. There was one show we did. It was a tanning studio in West Hollywood. I'm totally blanking on the name. But a lot of these were like 1 season shows because I think then they were still trying to figure out what was the perfect recipe. So it was fun to be in those early stages with honestly a lot of misses, but I think those all compounded to finding those successes.
Okay, so what pivoted you from TV world to PR?
So I moved to New York. I was writing a book at that time on dating.
What was it called?
But this time it's different. One Girl's Story of Equal Opportunity Dating, not published
Yet.
But I basically, I said yes to most people that want to take me on a date, not because I was interested. I just wanted to learn about them.
Mm-hmm.
So I met a lot of people. And
how many dates did you go on?
Oh my gosh. I've been on hundreds of dates.
Over
of first dates.
over 300?
Somewhere in that arena.
So almost a full year of first dates.
Yeah.
Wow, that'd be a cool book. 365
Yeah, it
dates.
was. And it was, I mean, man, really ran the gamut. And so I, in my head, said, I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to get my book published. I'm going to become a talk show host. And then I'm going to write for like Elle magazine or Vogue. And I'm going to have a column like a modern day Sex in the City.
Okay.
Right? Because who doesn't do that?
I mean, it makes sense. I see it. I see the path.
And but I have never lacked confidence. Let's just say that. Almost to the point of where it's like, it's almost sad for other people to watch because they're like, she has no idea how hard life is going to hit her in the face. But you know what? It's fine. So moved to New York. I remember I went and took my book around to different publishing houses. Again, no idea what I was doing. I went and I interviewed at Elle magazine and they offered me a job. And I think the salary was $19,000 a year. And this is
in New York.
This is 2006 or 2007.
And you're in New York.
In New York. But they're like, but you can have access to all of our jewelry samples. And I'm like, how am I going to pay rent with a jewelry sample? So I was feeling super defeated. My book wasn't getting published. I couldn't get a job that paid. And I basically stumbled into PR. I reconnected with a friend who said, you're telling me all these things you like. Why don't you think about PR? And I never thought about it. And it was kind of serendipitously. That's how I got my first PR job in New York City. And I lived there for about 5 or 6 years. And then I moved back to Southern California. I worked at another firm and then ultimately decided in 2014 to go out on my own.
So when you were working at the firm in New York, we say the word PR.
Yes.
It's very broad.
Yes.
People don't really understand PR.
Yeah.
I don't really understand PR, to be honest. Like PR can mean so many different things. What were you doing for the first company in New York? Your first step into it?
My first company, I was doing PR for consumer products, but for beauty brands. So brands like really large brands that are owned by Unilever, like Tresemme, or brands that are owned by L'Oreal, like Kerastase. So luxury beauty brands, and then some kind of masstige brands and mass brands. So brands you could buy at the drugstore. And my job, and now, again, this is like 2006, 2007, was to get them in magazines and newspapers. Mm-hmm. Remember those?
I do.
I still remember. I remember when there were like online publications and my client would be like, we don't care anything about online. It doesn't move the needle for us. Only focus on print. And now a client would never say that because of how much it's changed. But we were faxing press releases. Mm-hmm. We were doing what are called desk side, just where you take your client and the product and you go to Condé Nast and Hearst and you go meet with GQ and Shape and Vogue and you explain what the product is. Really what the job was is getting editors to write about our products. So they would be in the New York Times, they'd be in the Today Show, getting our clients on TV. So really kind of the conduit between the product and the founders and then being famous. So in whatever form that would be.
Is it fair to say that to be great at that job, making friends with the editors was everything?
Yeah.
Because if you were friends with the editor and you needed your client to get in the magazine.
Yeah. So you talk a lot about relationship capital. I am right there with you. Relationships are paramount, I think, to any industry, honestly, but specifically PR, because when you're an editor, you're getting pitched, which is the way what we call is like when we email someone and say, hey, write about this brand, they're getting thousands and thousands of pitches a day because when you're a publicist, there's all these databases where you get access to people's email. And so if they're not a name you recognize, you either automatically go into spam or they delete it. So I would say half of my job in New York was taking editors out, which again, yes, you can make money by doing this. I remember friends back home, they're like, this is your job. You're just like taking editors to the Rockettes. But brands give you money and you entertain on behalf of the brands and you basically get them tickets to see. We went to like Britney Spears at Madison Square Garden, just ridiculous stuff that these big brands had budget for. And you build relationships. And then that way, as you start to get more clients, you just have a bigger Rolodex of which to pitch your clients.
Well, that doesn't sound like a terrible job.
Not a terrible job.
So what made you leave New York to come to San Diego?
I'm a SoCal girl. I was born and raised in Tucson. I went to college here at University of San Diego, and New York is amazing. And I luckily go back there often. And when I had Covet, I had an office there, so I was there, monthly. But I ultimately just like this Southern California lifestyle. I think you can agree. I know you, funny enough, went to Tucson, which is where I grew up. You went to U of A, and I went here. So we swapped cities for college.
But we both ended up here.
We both ended up here. I mean, San Diego is an amazing place. And I always wanted to be a mom. And I think I was thinking long term, where's a good place to raise a family? And I love raising a family here.
Sure. So 2014, the day you decided to start Covet.
Yes.
What was the trigger? What made you go, you know what? Now's my time. I'm going to go do this thing.
Oh, boy. Okay. So you want the short story or the long story or the medium story?
I want the best version of the story.
So I'll try to be as succinct as I can.
No, just don't leave out the good stuff.
Okay. So I, at the time, was at another PR firm, an incredible PR firm that was mostly known for travel and hospitality. And I was doing PR for a brand named Suja. And Suja, this is 2013, was really the first brand to do cold pressed organic juice. And the focus at the firm I was at was not really consumer. So I kind of had this mini division within because of where I'd come from in New York. And so I was doing Suja's PR. I really loved the health and wellness space. I ultimately was approached by two people who were doing performance marketing for Suja. And they said, "You're so great. Would you ever, think about going out on your own?" I was like, "Oh, no. I am not an entrepreneur. I like getting a paycheck. I like having benefits. Like, I like knowing what's happening." And ultimately, they're like, "You should do it." I, at the time, had met my boyfriend, who's now my husband, and he was always my biggest cheerleader. And he comes from a very entrepreneurial family. And he was like, "You should do it. You should do it." So I ended up giving my notice, and Suja came with me. And then at the time, I thought I was starting a company with these other two guys. And they basically said, "We will give you a startup on basically steroids. We'll each have a third of the company, but we'll give you infrastructure, HR, legal," because they had a company already. And they're like, that way, it's like you're a mini entrepreneur. And I was like, this is a perfect thing. Like, I feel like it's kind of like the perfect mix. And so I left. Suja was a client. I was kind of looking at like, how are we going to actually structure this company? I ended up getting the paperwork from the two guys, and they're still like dear friends of mine. But what I ultimately saw was like, I'm basically like doing the company, and they're giving me like a LegalZoom account, and obviously more. But it was like, okay, so they see something in me, and like, I already quit my job. I already have a client. Still, I wasn't sure. And this time I was with Suja. They were the sponsor of the Victoria's Secret fashion show. So just side note, watching TV, taking editors out, you too can go backstage to the Victoria's Secret fashion show. So I was backstage at the Victoria's Secret fashion show, and I saw Damon John from Shark Tank. And so naturally, I go up to him and I say, "David, can I have a few of your minutes?" And I basically tell him the situation. I'm like, leaving this PR firm. I'm going to start my own PR firm. I'm not sure if like I should do it for a third. Does he have any advice? And he was, kind of quiet. And he was like, "Really like you." He's like, "Meet me in my office at FUBU in 2 days. I want to talk to you about doing something." And I was like, "Great, I'll be there." Definitely was not planning to go back to New York. I was going to go back to San Diego. So I rerouted. I went Paris to New York. I went up to, I think it was like the 42nd or 43rd floor of the Empire State Building. That's where the FUBU offices are. I had like platinum blonde hair to here, a hot pink dress. I go into the FUBU offices. I'm the only person without a grill. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I end up meeting with Damon, and he's like, "So tell me, what are your ideas?" And so I talked to him, and he's like, "I like your energy. I like your drive. Would you ever like think about like maybe you could do PR for some of our Shark Tank brands, blah, 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 blah." Then that proceeded to have like a few months of figuring out what that working relationship could look like. Ultimately, it was the confidence I needed to be like, how come all these people around me are like, you could do it? And my husband was by far my biggest cheerleader. And he was like, everyone is saying this, like, screw everyone else. I'm going to help you. We can do this. And Covet started.
And you turned down Damon John?
Turned down Damon John, yeah.
Turned down the two other guys?
Turned down the two other guys, yeah.
And started Covet.
Yeah.
So why the name Covet?
Why not? I mean, if you think about it, like Covet, if you want a product so bad that you need to have it, you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't drink, you just have to have this product, you covet it. And if you think about, the biblical terms like thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, there's something that's a little provocative about it as well. And so to me, it was simple, it was direct, and I think it really evoked what I was hoping to do through PR.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you turned down Damon John.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times most people wouldn't have the self-confidence to do it. And I'm glad you had the support system. I'm glad you had the cheerleader, because the signs were there.
Yeah.
They were just not banging you in the face enough until you had that little push.
Yeah. And I think ultimately for every entrepreneur I know, it's this concept of like saying yes and figuring out how to do it later. And whether it's the sign of like people wanting to work with you, or literally, I know some people who believe in like physical signs, you're never, I think, going to be 100% confident. And take it from me, someone who has a lot of confidence. I was so not confident, but you figure it out and you realize everyone else is figuring it out. Everyone is figuring it out.
That's what an entrepreneur is. It's a problem solver.
Yeah.
It's just the nonstop barrage of problems. You keep solving until you solve them. And then guess what? You find new problems to solve.
Exactly.
And if you don't find new problems to solve, you sell the company and start a new company to solve problems.
Exactly. And one thing I was always so in awe of at Covet, I was working with some of the biggest entrepreneurs in consumer, and I would be in rooms with these founders, and they would open up that they didn't know what they were doing. And I was like, if he doesn't know what he's doing, and he's running a publicly, traded company, and knew what they were doing, of course, but like, there's this myth, I think, when you're not an entrepreneur, that everyone has it figured out and you're just not built that way. I can't tell you how many times I'm like, I'm just not built like that, and then you start to actually just go through the motions. And I think the fear and anxiety so much more outweighs the actual act of doing it. And it's like so many things in life.
Well, and that's what, as we talked about, and the premise of the show here is to help people figure out success.
Yeah.
Because success is formulaic. At least that's my core belief. And through interviewing incredible people, I am cementing that belief in for my own self, but also everyone else, which is identify what successful people do, not the habits, or not the skills that they've acquired, but their habits and their attributes, and work on those. Don't learn a second language. Yeah. Work on consistency. Yeah. Work on discipline, perseverance, curiosity, whatever those are. So I'm a big believer in core values. You know that.
I know that. And I think it's great. And we did that at Covet. And I think core values were something that ultimately, when everyone was really on board with, we filtered all decisions through core values. Who do we hire? Who do we fire? Who do we promote? Who do we bring on? Who do we sell to? It was really this kind of North Star. And I always thought core values prior to doing it was like this cheesy thing. And it was like you go Bed Bath & Beyond and you see like these, a whale jumping out of a water, like Believe. And I was like, this is such bullshit. This is not a core, Then when you actually do it, it's a pretty powerful tool of which to grow and scale. And I think that companies who don't have it, it would be such a big oomph to their business if they explored those.
What's the bullseye?
Yeah.
I used to do the same thing. I used to think core values was fluff. And I used to laugh and go, yeah. And then I realized, wait, no. Core values is actually my target. It's the goal that if I'm playing a sport, it's the hoop. If I don't know the hoop, what am I shooting at?
Yeah.
And so when you realize, like, defining your hoop, defining your bullseye, defining your target, and saying, hey, my target is Kaizen. I'm going to get 1% better today. I can do that. Now it's just a matter of when, not if. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I don't have to have the confidence to know how to do anything today. Yep. To your point. Yeah. I can figure it out as I go.
And I think, too, if you have employees, especially if you have Gen Z employees, Gen Z wants to know every day, multiple times a day, why am I here? Yeah. Why do I belong? Why am I working for someone else? And so I advise some agencies now, and I take, again, all the mistakes I made, because I made so many. And one of the first things I do is like, what are your core values? Can everyone who works at your company say, this is why we come to work, this is why we exist? Because if not, and you're already in a remote workspace, which, luckily we, is a newer thing. I spent most of my career not being in that. I think it's really hard to feel like a sense of belonging. And core values, I think, are a huge driver for helping to create that.
Do you think remote work's going to continue?
I may be a little old school. And again, I come from a creative space where collaboration and brainstorming, I think, is so integral to what we do. I think a balance is great. But I'm starting to see, at least in some companies that I'm advising for, there's a little bit of a backlash and a little bit of just like a lack of energy as we go on year 4 of teammates never meeting, of having to give really uncomfortable conversations over Zoom. There's something about like seeing someone and either delivering really good news or really bad news, and having that like being in this occupying the same space. So for those reasons, I'm a little sad that we're in this kind of new way of working, but I think a great balance is hybrid.
Well, I think the camaraderie of work and going to work is overlooked. The fact that we all fight traffic to get there, and we all leave our families to get there, and we all have to eat the same food that's around our building, and we have those meetings, and we have the funny incident that so-and-so walked in with that thing on their head, or, oh, what a cool surprise so-and-so brought for the office day. Those little moments that we just don't talk about, that's how you build that loyalty, that teamwork together, which I think creates a lot of that.
I think that's so right. And I also think when there's not a physical separation between work and home, I love my drive where I could listen to a podcast. Like I got in the car, I was work Sarah. When I came home, I was mom Sarah. Now I'm like always work mom Sarah. And it's hard for me sometimes to draw the distinction between like being present with my kids or being present at work because it's all the same physical environment. I think there's going to be studies like 50, 100 years from now about how this has probably in some ways negatively impacted productivity. And obviously people are innovating every day, but I do think that there's something to be said for being in person, and I think there's going to be some sort of backlash against that.
I think we're seeing the big companies. I mean, the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks, they're bringing everyone back. I mean, Elon Musk was always with that, but, at Everbowl, we've always been in the office.
It's so nice coming in here and seeing people, even that coming in and being greeted. That I remember one of my first jobs was a hostess, and I remember the manager said, "You are the face of this restaurant. When people come in, you are going to be their first interaction with who we are." And I took that like the gospel. And it's similar when you come in here and you have someone say, "Hey, Sarah, can I get you a water?" There's just something about like the energy and the culture of a team. And I love that when I come here, I see people.
Well, thank you. But it's the human side.
Yeah.
It's human element, which if you want to get the best out of each other, I mean, some people truly prefer to be alone.
Yeah.
But that's not in PR.
No.
They wouldn't be in your field.
And think about Everbowl. When you come into Everbowl, yes, you're selling acai and pitaya, but like you're selling a lifestyle. You're selling a feeling of belonging. You're selling color. You're selling boldness. And like, could they buy it online? Sure. But like, I go into the Everbowl and Scripps Ranch all the time, and there's always like moms and kids, and they're eating over a bowl. And there's just that interaction that I think is so special. Yeah,
I agree. I think it's unfortunate. It was a necessity at the height of COVID. I think we need to work our way back to working together. Now, maybe it changes, and maybe it doesn't have to be 5 days at 12 hours a day because the work-life balance maybe isn't for everybody, or they need more of a work-life balance. But we got to get back to getting back together.
I see the same thing. This is a bit of a tangent, but I have a 20 and 22-year-old niece. My 20-year-old niece does not have her license. I said, "Why don't you have your license?" She said, "Because I just FaceTime my friends." And by the way, half of her friends she's never met in real life. She's met in like, I guess the equivalent of like AOL chat rooms, which would be like Snapchat. But this feeling that like these are real relationships in the real world, and I don't need to leave my room to experience those. Like to me, that makes me super sad because I was like, there's something about you're obviously missing something. But this whole Gen Z generation has such a different way of adapting, and I love this generation. They're progressive. They care more about our world. They care more about like, disparities and inequalities. But I think there's also just this new way of living, which is a little foreign to me.
What age is Gen Z exactly?
Gen Z, the definitions I think are like 15 to 22 or maybe a little older. Yeah, because millennial starts, I think, mid-20s.
Mid-20s to...
I think I'm the last of the millennial. I'm 40, and I think it's like 82 to 80 something. So I think you and I are right on the cusp.
I like how you brought me in there, Richie.
He's just celebrating his 40th. Can't get away without saying that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm officially at the tail end of my youth.
Which we were texting a little bit, and I was like, I think you made something like, "Oh, so weird, last day of 30s." And I was like, look at all you've accomplished in your 30s. So you've got a long way of accomplishments. And amazing
thank you.
Things.
Thank you. But more importantly, Covet.
Yes.
So when you sold Covet, how did that... Because I know when I sold my first company, I had this moment where I was like, I felt my company defined me, and now I sold it, and who am I without it? Because I had all this success. I mean, obviously, to grow a company to sale is an exciting time.
Yep.
You have all of your friends and peers and relationships know you as the leader of this company.
Yeah.
They've watched you. Now you give it to someone else. And I had this moment, I don't know if you did too, where when I sold my company and I went home that day, I said, if it fails from here, me? Like, am I forever tied to the success or failure of a company that I'm no longer involved with?
Weird thing is,
Did you have that feeling?
oh yeah. And I talked to a lot of people before I sold because, like I said, I was in EO and these other peer-to-peer entrepreneurial groups. And so I knew to a degree what I was getting involved with in terms of like letting go of the reins a little bit and like giving your baby away. And like I mentioned, I had 2 real babies after I had my first baby, which was Covet. So I started Covet in 2014, sold in 2020, and had a baby in 2017, and then also in 2020. And so I think motherhood really grounded me because I was intimately aware that there was something significantly bigger than who I was in the professional space. And that was partly why I did sell, because I did not want to continue to work, 100-hour days. I also sold because the industry was shifting. And when we talk about relationship capital, no matter how much PR shifted, that has stayed the same, but almost everything else has changed. You have the rise of affiliate marketing. You have these very blurred lines between earned media and paid media. And so I knew for Covet to stay relevant, we would either have to acquire a performance company, performance marketing merge. So for me, it was a very methodical thought, but it was not without, am I doing the right thing? What is this going to mean? I mean, all my emails were Sara, Covet PR. Like, I didn't even have a personal email box anymore. Like, there was no separation between Sara, mom, Sara. So it was definitely a journey. And it was a learning curve. When I sold, we were close to, I think, 40 people, and sold to a company, an amazing company called Power Digital, and they had 100 people. And over the course of my time there as chief brand officer, we grew to about 700 people.
Wow.
In 18 months during COVID, during the height of the pandemic, while acquiring 2 other companies. So you talk about, like, I couldn't even catch my breath to be like, what is happening, because as soon as Covet was bought, we knew the playbook was to acquire and then to be acquired. So I was very aware of what I was going into as much as I could, but you're not really aware until you're like in it. And we were already owned by private equity. I never worked at a company that was owned by private equity. So just there's a whole different vernacular I had to learn. There was a whole different way of business I had to learn how to do. So it was a sprint. It was actually, the way I say it, it was a marathon sprint. Like, I was like 28 consecutive marathons while running a 4.0 mile. There was like 0 downtime.
Was it fun?
It was super fun. I learned a ton. There were times it was challenging because you make different decisions when you're owned by private equity, and you make different decisions when you're trying to sell. And so some of the decisions I made at Covet were not to scale the company at an exceptionally fast pace where this phase was. So there were some things I had to let go of. But it was a really collaborative process, which really made the experience really pleasant.
What I love about PR is every company in the world needs it.
Yes.
So your opportunity is everybody. So for those listening who don't have budgets, can't hire a company like Power Digital is what it's called now. Can't hire Power Digital.
Yeah.
We're not going to get to Goldilocks yet, but need actual PR.
Yeah.
What is something you would give advice-wise to say, hey, go do this right now?
Yeah. Well, Bill Gates has this great quote, which is, if I was down to my last dollar, I'd spend it on PR. And I actually disagree, which is may sound a little interesting coming from where I am. But why I say that is because PR is not like how it used to be done. And if you don't have a budget to do affiliate marketing and some of these other necessary things to amplify your PR, it's actually not the best spend. And there's ways you can go totally rogue and do it. And so one of the first questions I get from people is it too early to bring on PR? When should I bring on PR? And there's a holistic set of questions I ask, but you can really do PR by yourself. And I think there's now more than ever, with the rise of Reddit chat rooms, with the rise of Twitter, and a lot of editors have their emails in their bio, which there's just so much information now. And so I always tell clients, you need to know what you're selling and why you're selling it. You need to know who your target audience is. And by that, I mean what publications are writing. Start to read those publications. Start to look for patterns in who's writing it. Start to follow those people on social. Start to just try to have a virtual relationship. And then as you get better at learning what makes a good pitch, what makes a good story, you yourself can come up with those things. Keep it really short and sweet. Your subject line to an email, if you've never written someone, should be super captivating and to the point. Your pitch should be no more than 3 to 4 sentences. You have a link to high-res imagery. You follow up once, that's it. And if you do enough, to your point, your 51st person you talk to, someone will write back. And then good press begets more good press. So you start to pop up in press, more people want to cover you. So it's not rocket science, but it does come down to relationship capital.
So I have to ask, why only follow up once?
So there's a rule and thumb with PR, which is like most editors, they say actually don't follow up, because if they get a pitch from you and they don't like it, but it's a good pitch, they typically will file it. So then when they're working on a story. So if you follow up more than once, it just starts to annoy them. And there's a balance. And like some editors are notoriously forgetful, and you know which ones to follow up 3 times, and maybe not by email, but maybe by a DM. But ultimately, like, you want to have a very respectful 2-way relationship. And if you're that person that's like, hey, just following up to see if you got the email below, or just pushing this to the top of your inbox, like, you start to get blacklisted from editors. And again, this is assuming you don't have that relationship. If you have the relationship, you obviously have a different way of working. But I would always tell the team, like, don't follow up more than once, unless there's a very good chance they missed it and you 1,000% know they would want to cover it, then maybe. But the rule of thumb is to not do more than once.
It's a good rule of thumb. I would have failed as a person in PR.
Well, you're right. Persistence. It's a balance of persistence and also like not, being too obnoxious.
I would have been the obnoxious blacklisted one. They'd be like, don't respond to Jeff. Yeah. Blacklist.
Yeah.
So I would have been every Friday, hey, just checking in.
Oh my gosh, funny thing. So ADP is known as like a great sales company.
That's where I worked.
Oh, that's great.
That was my only job.
So for maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years, we switched ADP halfway through Covet for a variety of reasons. This guy, Shane Smith, I get emails from Shane Smith 3 times a week. They're obviously automated emails. Every time I see an email from Shane Smith, I'm like, Shane Smith, leave me alone. I called Shane Smith last week because I needed payroll and his name stuck out to me. So I'm like, Shane, did you ever think this email strategy was going to work? I've received 400 emails from you. I've never once written you back. He says every once in a while it works.
It does, because so I call it being pleasantly persistent.
Yeah.
And I use it on Fridays. It may not win today, but eventually the team or company you're working with are going to make a mistake. You're going to get frustrated and you need to think of somebody.
Yeah.
Who do you think about? Shane Smith.
Yeah. I mean, I thought he was going to be shocked. Apparently, he's like, no, this happens all the time. I'm like, am I the only person in the history who's responded? But he's like, no, this happens all the time.
Yeah.
So persistence does pay off. I think in just the PR world, everything is with urgency and everything is with like knowing your subject. And so assuming you have both of those, the thought is that when it lands at the right time, they'll get back to you.
So I want to now tailor it to the new venture.
Yeah.
Goldilocks. Because here we are. We're starting over.
Starting all over.
We get to re-engineer a new company from scratch.
Yes.
That's not a PR firm.
Not a PR firm. 2.5 years left on the non-compete.
Not a PR firm. Everyone, not a PR firm. It's a strategy firm. It's to help us figure out what our bullseye is.
Exactly.
And identify our message. And I am not just talking Sara up. I'm also a client. We're using her at Everbowl, and we are this far along, and we need help.
Yeah.
And
it's a great example, actually. People will look at Everbowl. You're in so many states. You're constantly innovating. I mean, you guys have franchisees.
French fries.
No. Franchisees knocking down your door. You're like, wow, it's clearly working. But when we worked together and just did a brainstorming, we're like, we have a lot of competing messages. What's actually resonating? And in your business, it's such a different beast because it's a franchise. And so you have what works on corporate, but what works in La Jolla may not work in St. Louis. And so there's yours is a really interesting project to work on because nothing is linear, but in the case of your model, there has to be so many different factors that we bring into it.
Well, it's also, like all things, we're at a point a couple of years ago where everything was just so easy.
Yeah.
We were the exciting brand. Everybody loved us. Yeah. We weren't too big. We weren't too small. We were explosively growing. Now people are like, are they corporate? Yeah. Have they sold out? Have they lost their identity? Yeah. Now you're all over the country. So you're not just this SoCal brand that everyone wants to push to there's just you have to reinvent yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And we're growing and we don't have all the answers. And that was one thing that we've never done really a good job about, which is clearly defining our PR strategy.
Yeah.
We had PR.
Yeah. We
did PR stuff.
Yeah.
But we didn't have a strategy.
Yeah. And I would say it's even further than PR. It's brand. It's like, how do you talk to people on social? Like, what are you uniquely delivering that every other fast casual shop is, every other franchise isn't? You can go to store now and make your own acai. Why would someone pay a little bit more and go? So it's all of those things. And so, Yeah, I think when my business partner, Heather McNeil, when we were thinking about what is there left to do in this space, it feels like every idea has been thought of. I'm constantly amazed, by the way, when people think of new consumer brands, because it's hard to believe there's new ideas. But to us, this was it. It was a super simple premise. Like, how can we help you discover why people buy your brand? And if you haven't launched yet, how can people find your brand? And then what's going to keep them coming back for more? And ultimately, that's what we answer. And we do it through qualitative research. We do it through building your brand strategy. We build it through building your go-to-market strategy, which is in the form of a 12-month income statement. We do it through helping you with support. So we say we do a lot, but we also don't do a lot. And so the things we're not world-class at, we say, work with this person. We help manage that process. And throughout it all, we're making sure the strategy lines up to what people are experiencing, which I think is another missing piece. I think a lot of times when brands grow, they have a million partners, which is great, but like things just get lost in translation. If the right hand's not talking to the left, it just doesn't always work. And so the thought here too is you have two people who have a pretty, impressive careers that can help be kind of your North Star and your guiding light through this whole process.
And that's for those listening, that was the second time Sara mentioned world-class or be world-class at. And that's something that she strives for. She did it at Covet, and now she's doing it with Goldilocks. That's also what allows success to truly happen. If you're not striving to be world-class at whatever it is you're doing, you're going to lose to people and companies that are.
Yeah.
And so what you do with your own companies as the leader of your company, but what Goldilocks does for your brand as well, is they help you define what you're going to be world-class at and how you clearly define that message, both in words, but also as a company. How do we show that love?
Yeah, and I would say now more than ever, you alluded to this, like people, you can't buy customers like you used to, right? Like you can't just be really good at Facebook.
Right.
You need to actually have people covet your brand, love your brand, want your brand. You need to storytell. And that in this really weird economic climate where people are having a hard time raising money and Facebook ads aren't working and algorithms are changing, if you don't have something that people can unequivocally say, this stands for that, it's just so much harder. So we just try to give you a little leg up and help with that.
And isn't it fair to say the best way to sell products and services is to have your customers do it for you?
Totally. 100%. And if you look at, again, using Everbull as an example, like you have the footprint across the country, right? You have these evangelists in all these different states. And so if you can empower them with like what you guys do and have them be your mouthpieces, there's no more powerful marketing than that.
So if you're listening to this and you don't have a clear message currently for your company, you don't have that strategy, not only do you need to reach out to Sara or Heather at Goldilocks because they are who you need to work with, but you also can hear Sara speaking now on panels across the country on topics from entrepreneurship to female-led businesses and team building. And now you're really just getting out there and doing even your own personal branding marketing, which I love.
Oh, well, thank you. It's weird to be on the other side, let me tell you.
It is, isn't it?
Super, super.
And now you get to do the PR firm stuff for your own brand, which is not a PR firm because you're a strategy firm.
Which is why I haven't done it, because I've been so busy with clients. And now I understand why clients have sometimes a hard time getting it out. But yeah.
So last thing.
Yeah.
I'm listening to this. I'm like, I want to reach out to Goldilocks. I'm just not sure if I am in the Goldilocks zone. Am I the right size?
Yes.
Just to reiterate, you said from everything from pre-revenue to
$30 million in revenue, consumer packaged goods, so CPGs. So really our sweet spots are like food, beverage, beauty, wellness, self-care. And, I say to my mom, something you buy at Whole Foods, something you buy at Sephora, something you buy online. And we love working with amazing founders. That's our prerequisite. Don't be an asshole.
Oh.
Because we work with enough assholes. So we're like, do we want to hang out with you? Are you someone we'd want to grab dinner with? That's our first rule. And then we'll find out what your product is.
You should have a online form. First question, are you an asshole? Yes. Right? It just goes to a black screen.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah. But it's Goldilocks.com is our website. And what I say to everyone, like, I'm happy to just talk and point people in the right direction. It's a really cumbersome, hard world out there to figure out who to bring on for what. And so if we're not the right people, I'll be the first person to tell you that and point you in the right direction of who is.
And I can reiterate that. Sara was never selling us. I had to knock her door down to let her to take us as a client because we kind of are. We have a CPG arm, but it's not our core business. And I needed to work with Sara and Heather because they're the best. And truth is, she will tell you straight up if she's not able to help. And she's authentic and she's real. And so if you just need a good conversation, I assure you, this is who you want to talk to.
I'm very flattered by that. Thank you. So fun. And, I'm excited for people now hearing this. And so hopefully, in the next 6 months or so, we'll see some new stuff coming out of Everbowl from the work we do. And again, it's not broken. It's just making something amazing that much more amazing.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you guys haven't heard about my new book, Relationship Bank Account, click the link in the show notes or search the title on Amazon. This book is packed with all my secrets to success in both relationships and life. Make sure to pick up a copy, and if the book helps you on your journey, let us know by leaving a review. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you on the next one.